Hi plant queens, welcome back to my channel. I'm Saab, and today we are going to look at some of my fastest growing houseplants. Now this is a mix of both rare and common houseplants. I would say they're mostly somewhere in between, like uncommon, so they won't be super hard to find, and these are just fastest growing in my experience. From maybe I've had all of these for about a year or two, some of them a little bit longer. But again, this is very subjective, so just a little bit of a disclaimer. I want to talk a little bit about how if you get a plant and it's a cutting, it'll take a while before you see how fast it's actually going to be growing in your collection. So it's important that when you gauge how fast a plant really grows, it should have very established roots for one, and it should also be acclimated into your space properly. So of course, some plants take a while before they start showing just how fast they're able to grow, and these plants have shown me that they are some of the fastest ones in my condition. So I'm an indoor gardener. For those of you who've never watched my videos before, I mostly take care of them indoors with grow lights. Some of them are by the windows, and as I go through the plants one by one, I will be telling you how I care for them, how often I water them, what kind of nutrients they get, things like that. So without further ado, I will just start with maybe this one. This is actually just a cutting that I'm showing you of the first plant because the mother plant is too big for me to lift and carry here in front of the camera. So this one is an Epipremnum pinnatum skeleton key, and this is just a propagation. Here, let me show you. So it's called a skeleton key because, well, it looks like a key. I don't get the skeleton part actually. If you know why it's called a skeleton, let me know in the comments below. But this is one of my absolute favorite plants. It's so easy to propagate. It's so easy to take care of. And there's only really one main drawback for me here. I will let you know what that is later. But Epipremnums in general, like the Epipremnum pinnatum, those are really very easy to take care of, and they're really good for beginners, and they can get out of control really quickly. I will insert some b-roll of what the mother plant looks like. I have propagated from this so many times, and it just grows back faster and bigger every time. So for this propagation, I will show you what the roots look like. It's just growing in moss. I sometimes propagate in moss, sometimes in pon, and sometimes in leca. So you can see how well rooted it is already, and it's growing really well. This is why it's so easy to propagate. Usually with philodendrons, you will see aerial roots just on the node. There's a singular aerial root, but here you can see there's aerial roots along the stem all over. This actually attaches to the wall, like you would see in the b-roll I showed you. It wants to attach to the wall even though I'm already putting it up on a pole, and the pole is already too short for it because of how fast it's growing. And yeah, so the only thing I do to this plant is I give it a bright indirect light, actually more of medium light. It does not like very high light. The leaves will burn quite easily if it gets too close to a grow light or too much direct sun. So be mindful of that if you are growing it under grow lights. They don't like their leaves too near the source of light. It bleaches them out or it burns them. And the other thing is this plant, this is the main drawback I was talking about, really needs a lot of nutrients, whether it's in soil, in leca, in moss. This one is in moss, the main one is in pon, and I have tried growing it in leca as well. You need to provide a lot of nutrients or else this will happen. See that yellowing? That is not from pests or anything like that. It's not from too much sunlight. It's from a lack of nutrients. So these plants are very heavy feeders. If I miss one watering and I don't give it nutrients or fertilizer, if you don't give them nutrients, this will happen. The leaves will yellow and it's not pretty to look at. There is no really major, I think, disadvantage for the plant except that it looks quite ugly. As long as you catch it early and you provide it with the nutrients that it obviously wants, then it will go back to giving you nice green leaves. For pests, I think I have gotten spider mites on this before, but it wasn't very difficult to get rid of. It's just the typical pest prevention method I use, so I don't think that's really an issue. It's really just the nutrients with this one. But yeah, this is one of my favorites. It's very easy. The only high maintenance part is the nutrients, but otherwise it's really a beginner houseplant in my opinion. The Epipremnum pinnatum skeleton key. So pretty and unique. It's not for everyone, but those who love it like I do, I really am into this kind of houseplant, the weird wonky ones. Okay, so this next one is no stranger to my channel, but if you remember seeing this plant before, you will be shocked at how much it has grown since then. So this is a Dishkidia ovada, or a watermelon Dishkidia. Wow, look at that. How much this has grown. I'm trying to fit it all into the screen, but I don't think it's possible. But you get what I mean. So this is a watermelon Dishkidia, or Dishidia. And it has a lot of spider mites right now, actually. Good thing I pulled this down. So you can see right there. I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's webbing there which indicates spider mites, so I'll have to treat that. Not really an issue. Spider mites aren't very difficult pests to treat. But anyway, for Dishkidias, they are quite like Hoyas in the way I care for them, and they grow kind of like Hoyas too, but this is growing much faster than Hoyas in my opinion. Look at how lush it is. This just grew from a single vine before, and now this is one of my most lush houseplants. So for Dishkidias, they really need a lot of sunlight, bright direct sunlight. This is receiving direct sunlight from my window in the afternoons, and it's not even enough to sun stress them. This looks really gorgeous sun stressed. I will try to look for a photo of what a sun stressed one looks like and insert it here so you can see. So if this is getting bright afternoon sunlight and it's not even that color yet, then you know that it really needs a lot of that light. And for watering, I would water this when the leaves can kind of bend. Like you can see right now that it's not really bending, it's still hard when I touch it. But when it's soft and I can bend it already, then I know it's time to water. Although I do try to water a little before that. I would say I water this around once a week, but that's for my condition, so that's just when I notice that it needs water the most. And yeah, it doesn't really complain if I miss a watering by a day or two. It's really low maintenance that way, and it's really one of my favorites because as you can see, it apparently has a lot of spider mites, and I didn't even notice until now. It's just super easy and it grows super fast, and it looks gorgeous hanging like that. I think it's so underrated. Nobody really talks about this a lot, except I think to hate on it sometimes. I think the only con really is propagation for this one. This is not the easiest to propagate. These really thin stems tend to rot when I propagate it in water. The easiest way for me is to put it in pond. I have found that they don't really like leca very much, probably because they're very succulent. But propagating this in pond is the best way in my opinion. And she does need a haircut soon. So if you want a video on how I propagate in pond and this plant specifically in pond, just let me know. And then for fertilization, I fertilize this just like I would any other houseplant. It's not as demanding with nutrients as the skeleton key is. So I would say every watering I do fertilize it, but if I miss one, if I just water it with plain water, it does not really complain. So that is the Dishkidia. Just one more look at that beautiful, the Dishkidia ovada. Wow. Okay. That was a struggle, and I won't bother hiding the plant anymore because it's just tangled up everywhere and you can see what it is. So this is a string of hearts. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people already know how fast growing string of hearts are. I'm not even gonna try to. Wow, look at that. It's really long now. This is really amazing because I will put a photo of what this looked like before when I first got it. And you can see how much it has grown. I don't even know how to hold this properly. Yeah, so this is actually a string of hearts Durban, so it's a different kind of string of hearts, I would say, from the regular one. I have seen the regular one and it is quite different. I'll try to give you a close-up view of what the leaves look like. So you can see that it's kind of silvery, but not as silver as the silver glory is. And it's a little closer to the string of spades, kind of in between a string of hearts and a string of spades. I wouldn't say the hair is any different. So for string of hearts, a lot of people say that you shouldn't really water these a lot, but I disagree. I think that they really enjoy a good, thorough watering. Not as often as non-succulent houseplants, because these are succulents, but I wouldn't let them dry out too much, and they seem to be really enjoying that. As you can see, I have propagated from this so many times, but it just won't stop growing. And yeah, it just keeps reaching the bed because it's on top of my bed. I have no idea what to do with it at this point, to be honest, but I am glad that it seems to be really, really healthy and really happy with me. I give this bright indirect light, but it can definitely tolerate direct light since it is a succulent. It'll actually make it a little bit red, a little bit sun-stressed if you give it bright direct light. And if you're into that, then this is a good plant to do that with. For nutrients, it's not very picky with how often you fertilize it. Sometimes I miss fertilizing or two, and it doesn't really complain. It just keeps going, which is why I love this plant. It's really, really low maintenance, as long as you don't overwater it, and as long as you keep in mind that you have to be trimming this a lot. So the top part is really the only other con of this plant. It tends to lose leaves as it grows. From the top, it's kind of bare, and you can see that the bottom parts are all really lush. So it'll kind of lose the upper half here. And the only solution to that really is to just keep propagating it and putting it back in the pot so it looks more lush. I might have to do that soon again for maybe the 4th time. But it's really a really fun plant, and I love maintaining it just because it's such a rewarding one to grow. I'm just going to quickly mention the Marble Queen because it's my channel name, and I am Marble Queen on Instagram if you want to DM me there if you have any questions. Yeah, I don't think you have to say anything about pothos at this point. Everyone knows that they're the fastest growing houseplants, and I have propagated this Marble Queen non-stop, and it's still shooting out new growth all the time. I won't go into the care anymore. I'm sure you guys already know how to care for pothos. I just wanted to point her out because she's there today. Okay, second to the last plant is actually a plant that I've never heard talked about before on YouTube, at least from the channels I watch. And I think it's a shame because it's such a beautiful plant. That is actually one of the most beautiful houseplants in my collection, and super duper underrated. Look at how gorgeous that variegation is. Let's just appreciate her first. Wow, that is beautiful. Look at that. Okay, wow. And this is the newest growth. So you can see that they grow by expanding. So they start out very small, and generally I try not to touch them when they're growing out like that, kind of like anthuriums, so the leaf doesn't get deformed. Okay, so this plant, I'm not gonna lie, it's not the easiest one to care for. Pipers in general, I would say, are not beginner houseplants. They're more for intermediate to advanced houseplant owners. That doesn't mean you can't try it out if you don't feel very confident. But I would start with the non-variegated version because the variegated version is quite more expensive, a lot more expensive than the non-variegated version. So if you can keep that one alive, the regular one, then you'll probably have no problem keeping this alive. But to help you out, I will give you a few tips. And this started out with one leaf, I think, from a few months ago, and that already fell off. I was still trying to figure out how to care for it properly. It's not the easiest houseplant. You can see this other leaf that it has at the base. Half of it is crunchy, and that is because I missed a watering. So this has really thin leaves. I know it looks really robust on camera, but it's actually quite thin in real life, and that means it doesn't really hold on to a lot of moisture. So if you slightly underwater it, this will happen. So it's absolutely necessary not to miss a watering with the Piper nigrum. Did I say the name? Piper nigrum variegata? Okay. Yeah. And it also really likes to be fertilized. It will kind of get discolored if you don't fertilize it every watering, but at the same time, it doesn't want to be over-fertilized. It's kind of like a calathea, to be honest. You don't have to water it with distilled water, but you kind of just have to be mindful of when was the last time you watered it and when was the last time you fertilized it, just to stay on top of its needs. So if you are able to do all of that, it will reward you with one new leaf after the other. You'll see this isn't even done hardening off yet, and there's already a new leaf coming out there. The only other issue that I have with this plant, because again, this is a tough one, it's quite difficult to propagate. If I propagate, let's say 5 leaves, 2 of those will live and 3 of them will die. The top cut almost never makes it. Like if I cut it here and there's new growth, it usually dies off and shrivels away. The best way I've found to propagate it is via water propagation, and even then it's really risky. That's why I think it's so expensive, just because it is quite difficult to propagate. Despite all of that though, it is a beautiful plant, and if you want to try your hand at it, then I wish you luck, because it is a beautiful plant, but she does have some needs. As long as you're able to meet those, you'll be okay. Okay, so the last plant on my list is one of my favorites at the moment, and it is really a fast-growing houseplant. I could not believe how fast this has grown. And this was on my wish list for a very long time, and I finally got it from a trade, and then the prices actually started dropping. I think I showed it in a plant haul recently. So those of you who have seen that might remember how small this was when I got it just a few weeks ago. This is my Philodendron White Princess. Wow, look at that. That is so beautiful. That's a thumbnail right there. That's so gorgeous. So this is a white princess. Look at how much she has grown. This is the old leaf that I got it with. It's already coming off. But you can see it has given me so all of this from this point up here. That's all new growth. Isn't that completely insane? Look at how beautiful the variegation is. And this one is my favorite one. Wow, that's gorgeous. I am not happy that it's giving me a white leaf right over there. I don't know if you can see that. Because it might be all white. It looks like it might be all white. Let's move past the aesthetics and get into the care. I have a bunch of moss here just because you can see how aggressive the aerial roots are over here. And I want to be able to get a top cut to be able to propagate this easier, because the internodal spacing, that's the spaces between the roots. How do I show you that? There. So the internodal spacing, like here, is quite small. So this is where you would usually cut philodendrons to propagate them, right? So they're quite small, and I don't want to risk root rot reaching the node and ruining the roots that it does have. So that's why I'm air layering it. For watering this, it's just like any other philodendron. So just when the pond feels dry, this is in pond. Just when the pond feels dry, I would say I water it about once every week or a week and a half. It's not particularly thirsty, and it's also not a very drought tolerant plant, I wouldn't say. But it will forgive you if you miss a watering or two. And I give it bright indirect light. It's directly under my Sansi grow light, and it seems to really like that because it's growing a lot, like a lot. I would say it would do fine if it gets a little bit of direct sunlight, but not so much that it might bleach the leaves, because that won't be pretty. I also fertilize this every time I water it. It seems to be growing really fast, and it needs a lot of nutrients to compensate for it. You can see where I missed fertilizing it here with this leaf. There's like slight shades of yellow. That is not variegation, that's just nutrient deficiency. Yeah, so it's really important to nail the rate of fertilization or giving it nutrients, just to be able to maintain the nice color of the leaves. Although again, I don't think it's a particularly terrible thing to see discoloration on the leaves. But yeah, it's really one of my favorites right now. I can't believe how gorgeous it looks gorgeous on camera and on Instagram, and it looks gorgeous in real life, I promise. Okay, so I think that is it. Those are my fastest growing houseplants, of course not including things like the honorable mention, the pothos, you already know that. The micans, the heartleaf philodendron, those are the classic fast-growing houseplants. These are ones I thought would be kind of interesting to show you if you're looking for something more uncommon or something not usually associated with fast-growing things in your average nursery. If you have any questions or if you have suggestions of your own of fast-growing houseplants, because I do love adding those to my collection because they're so fun to watch, please leave a comment down below. I always love reading your comments. They really do make my day. And if you haven't already, please follow me on Instagram. I'm at Marble Queen on there, and I post plant pictures semi-regularly. I'm trying to get back into it, and I can answer your DMs if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next week. Bye!